It's a one-party consent, and I consent.
Okay, well, I do too.
All right, five pass. Let's get started.
All right.
Everyone, a couple of housekeeping issues. I've muted you all. I've turned off your cameras, but your chat window works, so we can ask Jim questions. Um, the spring roundtable event for AEC Acoustics Best Practice Roundtables. The submissions for session topics is open. That'll close around the end of December. So go to aecacoustics.com and look for the roundtable event, and you'll find a link to submit a session. All of our session facilitators and presenters are accommodated with free registration. So that's a nice thing. And it's a good event. Who else is here? Tom Kemp. And with that, I would like to introduce Jim Balding, who I've had the pleasure of knowing for many years. Jim has a degree in architecture, or it's not actually architecture, it's like design,
Environmental design.
environmental design from the University of Colorado in Boulder. And a little fact about Jim is he was a early Revit adopter. So more than I think you were using Revit before the acquisition, actually, or before
Yeah,
it even was publicly available.
I got the tail end of no, tail end of beta one, and I got beta two.
Yeah.
So October of 99.
So we've just
So
tipped
just
over.
finished 25 years.
You were not a very bleeding edge adopter of Enscape. You told me that
Yeah.
rendering was a pain, so you didn't like to do it.
Renderings.
Then you
It's a
found out
waste of
it's not
time.
rendering. Enscape's not
Yeah,
rendering, it's something else.
yeah.
Uh, and two little uh, tidbits about Jim. He was a cheerleader in college.
That was
And
a great gig.
and
It
here he is,
was.
he's still a cheerleader. He's still enthusiastic
Yeah,
about
exactly.
what he does. And the other thing is, if you're ever in Orange, California, Jim has the coolest office ever. It's like a restored craftsman style bungalow, oh,
Yeah,
with period furniture, and it's just like great. Little
yeah. It's
downtown bespoke Orange, California. So
yeah, it's out in the middle, not out in the middle of nowhere, but it's a
it's
nice
tucked
little,
away. It's
little a nugget of
take the
joy.
bicycle with Jim, bike to downtown, get breakfast at the filling station, which is a cafe
Yeah.
from an old gas station. It's
Yeah.
great. So, Jim, talk to us about how you're using Enscape to design these sports facilities and how did that get started?
So, well, stepping back to what we just talked about is I used to think that rendering was a waste of time. You just look at the plans and you visualize what it's going to be, but then realize that that wasn't a talent that a lot of people had and or a skill. And saw what Enscape was doing 5 or 6 years ago and had people saying, "Oh, I leave Enscape open on my screen." So downloaded the free copy and started tinkering with it and realized that my clients really loved it. They love the ability to see what it was or make a change in Revit and see it instantly
Right.
in a realistic type rendering, and then walking around in Enscape blows them away. And of course, we're doing this on Zoom because I got the latest. These renderings are done for a company in Canada,
Right.
and we would walk around and they would say, "Oh, I don't like this light fixture there. I don't like it there." Or take these out. So I take them out and they go, "Oh, that's better." And we're making
In the
decisions. So it's
moment.
not, yeah. So it's not a visualization tool. I guess it is a visualization tool, but it's a decision making tool. Yes or no. And you get the decision, you're done, you moved on, and you've taken it out of Revit. So now it's out of the quantity takeoffs and all of that stuff. And when you're done with a meeting, it wasn't really a meeting, it was a working session.
Right.
So it was very productive. So
Yeah.
so as I adopted that, I continued on and bugged Phil for tips and tricks on how to do things. And one of the things that we're going to start off talking about today is something that Phil told me about, like I said, 6 or 7 years ago, which is the cutouts.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay, yeah. So
Yeah.
so as we go through, we've got a couple of things. Jim and I talked yesterday and said, well, what do we want to talk about? Let's walk around. So we walked around, found what we want to talk about. So the first thing is the fence.
Okay.
And there's not a lot of fences inside of your typical architectural project, but this one is not typical. Um, the beautiful thing here is you want to give the visual impression of things being detailed without clogging your model. So this is really detailed. Um,
Yeah.
but the way you did this, so what's the what's the category of this object
So
of
this is a curtain wall. And
and
so it's got a
why did you
curtain.
use curtain walls? What was the advantage there?
Well, I was starting about thinking about railings, but railing panels were kind of a pain, and the stretchability of the curtain wall, but also that I could insert a panel anywhere I wanted with the curtain
Right.
wall and be done, and then I can move them around. So a railing has to be
Oh yeah, yeah. If
regular
you
or
unpin
whatnot.
them, you
So
can move around the.
yeah,
Yeah,
so
you can't
yeah,
do that with.
and then as I have a gate, I just draw a little one, and then I can rotate it to show it swinging and whatnot, and it worked really well. And
Yeah, walls
if
and
you
curtain walls contain space. So if you have to start, that's like one of the things railings don't do. They don't contain space. And
right,
yeah, it's a nice
so,
tip.
so as you're
But you
standing
made this,
back,
you
yeah,
made the cutout yourself.
yes. So I want to talk a little bit about this. Is as you're standing back, you go, that's a fence. But then
Yeah.
as as you zoom in, you say, okay, well, that's kind of a fence, but it's but the point is, from a distance, that's a fence. So let's take a look at the material for that. Um, I guess I could have opened that up first. We're using what's called a cutout, right? And you taught me this a long time ago. And while that's opening, so cutout is part of the material, and
Right.
it's actually a pattern. So let's go to chain link and get this dang thing out of the way.
We're doing it live.
Chain link. So
Yep.
so here's my chain link appearance, and you can see that I've got this chain link cutout
Nice.
image. So a couple things about this. You can see that I actually put a hole in the middle just because I could.
Yeah.
And I always do something if it's gonna be seen more than once, then
Hmm.
go ahead and do it. I mean, it's gonna multiply your quality. So this is a 5 inch by 4 inch um, blackout, if you will.
Right.
And I drew this in Revit. So that's another tip is that if you draw it in Revit, you can dimension it and get it on like a drafting view, and
Right.
you draw
Oh,
it
just
to
you just
scale.
threw it in a drafting view as a filled
Yeah,
region or as a
and then
solid.
yeah, these are filled regions, and then it's just I took a piece of an image, traced it,
Right.
and then I just did it to scale, and then I knew what the scale was. This was a while ago that I did this one. I started doing the images, and then I put the scale in. I go 12 by 6 or whatever the size is of the image, so that I can use that as a cutout. And the other thing is that's important to note is that you can see that the black comes to the corner.
Right.
So if you put a rectangle in there and do a dot in the middle, it's going to array the dot. But if you do four corners of the dot, you don't need the rectangle because the edges of the quarter rounds become the edge of the image. And I'll show
Yeah,
you where it didn't work.
you mentioned
And
that when you export
yeah,
the image to get that,
yeah. So you
the
export, I
image
exported it.
automatically crops to the extents of what's in the image. And so
Right,
if all your drawing is in the center of the image, it just crops to that origin. So
right,
you're better off putting either dots on the image so that it knows what the extents are, or you just, instead of modeling the circle, you would model the four corners at the quadrant, which makes a circle because that's where it overlaps.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was something I figured out later, and I can show you where I screwed it up. Um, but that's the idea of a cutout. And uh, from then we did lots of cutouts. I don't know if are we done with
Yeah,
the
that's the
fence?
vent.
You want to go?
That's it. That's good. That's a cool thing because you're making the project light. Oh, you did the ceiling above the
Yeah. So that's what we're going to
check-in
show
area.
you.
Same
So
technique.
this is a screw up. I'll show you. And I left it because I didn't care. Okay, so you can see that I wanted this to look like wire
Yeah, like a
that's
twisted
going up and
wire.
over. So I didn't make it straight. I made it kind of wiggly. And you can see the dashed line in there. That
Those are
was
the
my
top,
extent that I had failed to take out of the cutout.
right.
And it now shows up and actually look, you can see light coming through it.
Yeah.
But if I'm standing on the ground, I don't see it, and I'm
No.
I'm good with that. So I didn't fix it.
It's not.
So,
It's
so
okay.
it comes off as wire standing here.
Right.
And again, it's all about, giving that impression and
Yep.
not weaving a physical object that would kill your computer.
Yeah, making it actually geometry. Yeah, so the
Right.
other two cutouts, one of them was a pickleball. And
Yeah,
what I
let's take a
like
look at
about this
that.
project, and it's this subtle attention to detail, because you could just model round circles of a color, and it's okay, but these little textural things, like we know what a wiffle ball feels like, you know what a pickleball looks and feels like. It has to have these circles, and that's not geometry. That's another cutout.
Yeah,
Same thing,
exactly.
and it keeps them nice and
So
light.
so you can see where the edge, so it takes this and makes it a pie shape and applies the geometry. So you can see this got a little line in it because that's the way
That's a Revit
Revit
thing.
builds. Yeah, and let's go over
Revit
here to
doesn't
this
do a
guy.
good job of uh,
Yeah. So
applying
let's look.
textures to round surfaces, but it gives a great impression.
Okay, so I don't know why our lighting is weird, but
There
oh,
you
back it up. You can see that there's no star on a pickleball,
go. Right.
but that doesn't really matter. And just for what it's worth, it is not advisable to be jumping and diving on a pickleball court.
It's a hard surface.
Yeah.
So
Um,
you did the same kind of thing with a cutout for the lamps, the
no,
custom lamps that you built, but
no,
this is
no.
not, in this case, it was not an image because the shape would not have conformed to just
Right,
creating a single texture. So this is more of a modeling technique.
right. So this was a solid. It just for giggles. Let's take a look here. This is their logo. So you
Right.
can see they got this, pin pickleball logo. So I said, let's make a lamp and turn it upside down and make a light fixture. And they said, no, we're never going to do that. So I did it anyway, and they loved it, and they're having them made because that's a
Well, now they're having them
differentiator.
made because
And
yeah,
yeah,
it's part of their
so
logo.
yeah, this is actually voids, and we had trouble.
Do you want to open
Getting
it
those
up? Or
voids to land in the right spot and being able to rotate them and have them going perpendicular to the surface that they were cutting through. Do you want? Maybe I should have opened
yeah,
that
yeah, yeah,
model up.
because it's that's one of the things in Revit is you don't always model the geometry that you want. You model more than you need and then subtract what you don't want. And
So
it's a
let's,
parametric
yeah.
relationship between these solids and voids.
Now here I am trying to let me turn that off.
There you go. Yeah, that's the
So this
light
is actually a
that
light
actually renders.
fixture.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But then if you click on it, you can see the voids.
Gotcha.
So those are a void family, and when I tried to make them go all the way through and then rotate them, I couldn't control them. So I
Right.
had them go to the midpoint and then have two of them. Then I could array them and then rotate them and get them to go through the ball, the sphere,
So going
where
through
I
the
wanted them
same
to.
thing twice didn't work. You just
Yeah.
used
So
half of
there's,
it, went one direction,
yeah,
or the other.
let's go to 3D. Um, hide that. So you can see that that's a group that was, I arrayed this group. Oops. Well,
Okay.
actually, I had a group and a master group. So I had one group that I arrayed them around, then another one that I could rotate them on axis and then rotate that around. That took a long time to figure out. It probably took me 3 or 4 hours to get that technique, but
Yeah.
I'm sharing it now.
But now you're
Uh,
designing lamps.
yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
well,
and
so
groups.
yeah, so when you need these patterns, sometimes they're materials or you can use geometry, but you try to do it as efficiently as possible. Um, and speaking of efficiency, you have this technique, and I think we've always talked about this idea that you don't have to model something perfectly to get
Right.
it in the project. So there's this in this area, there's like a smoothie machine, and it's evolved over time. The reason I saw that this kind of caught my eye is if you've ever seen these kinds of ice smoothie machines, like in a bar or a cafe, when they spin, it makes the icy slushy material kind of wind up to one side and then it slopes. And I just thought, if you're going to show some smoothie material in the machine, don't just model it flat. Like you went to the trouble of, or not the trouble, but you went to the detail of actually giving it that texture. But it was never always this.
No, no. So I'm going to share that with maybe I should have opened that up earlier. Um, Here we are live. Um, let's
Because
see.
this is
So
evolved. You started
yeah.
with
So I'll
placeholder,
share. I'll share this one. So there's no smoothing machine, right?
right?
So they said we want. Oh, and then by the way, you can see here that the computers don't have any images on them. I built a few things, and this is the what I call the placeholder approach.
Right.
Um,
Yeah, even with the
uh,
lamps you made, those custom lamps, you don't have to model it with the holes. You could start by just going, look,
yeah.
this is the overall shape, this is the overall where it goes.
Mhm.
What is
So
it?
here's
Where is it?
yeah.
And then
Here's
later
the
on, keep adding the
yeah.
detail.
There's the
Oh,
first
yeah, yeah, yeah.
iteration. That's actually the second iteration of the smoothie machine.
Right,
Nothing inside. There's no handle pulls. There's no words on it.
right,
And then later I put the handles on. Then I put the fill inside. Then I cut the fill inside to make it look right, to
right.
make it look like a smoothie. Then the font that I use for smoothies, I changed to something more fun. But that happened over the course of 3 or 4 weeks
Hmm.
to where I just, and we talked about this since AU days, early times, was the placeholder approach.
Yeah,
Is that you put something in that's the right size, and then you come back and do it later. Because as we talked about, you put the smoothie machine in, and you spent 2 or 3 hours getting it
right,
dialed in, and then the client goes, "Oh, I don't want a smoothie machine." Like, oh, so you put it in a box that took you 3 minutes,
right.
and then you modify that box and you modify it again, and you just kind of go through and do this waves of updating on things as you go.
As
The
you
vending
go.
machines, I mean, we had vending machines for a long time with nothing in them. And then
Right.
I asked my son, I said, can you make some images of vending machines? And that's just an image of a vending machine that we put a light behind and made it
Right.
transparent. Yeah. You're not going to model all that
Yeah, you
stuff.
don't have to have the perfect thing. You don't have to go online and spend a lot of time searching for the perfect thing. Just get the size right, get the location right,
Yeah.
and then iterate as
Yeah.
you go. I
Yeah.
love it.
So,
That iteration process, the way you made the banners along between the play
yeah.
areas is a nice technique because again, the we're talking about iteration, how you can swap these out.
Yeah.
So what is that made of and
So
why?
I started out making these banners at fixed size that were 10 feet by 6 feet or 12 feet by 6 feet or whatever they were. And
Right,
then I would take an image and make that image 10 feet by 6 feet, whatever. And then realize, and it looked like crap. I mean, it looked like it just didn't look good. So I decided that I would make things 4 feet tall and I would repeat the image. And
okay.
and you can see here that like over here on Save My Play, it cuts off over there. And it cuts off over at Toasty also. Oops. So see, Toasty's cut off.
So it doesn't have
I
to be the size of it, just let the image
no, just
repeat.
just the height,
Right.
and then let it repeat. Okay. So and then to get it to look right, I'm going to bring Revit back over. Um, let's cut this, go through this section.
Oh, you want to see what you see in Revit, what you would actually see. Gotcha.
Okay, so this is a banner and it's got a pattern on it. It's a model pattern and it's just a grid. And I change the size of the grid or the color to represent the different banners, but these are walls. You
Okay.
can't do this with a family
Right.
because the family you'd have to do it in the family editor. You can't do it live in the
Oh, you can't
project.
move the origin around of the image
Yeah.
back to the family. So you just make it a wall and then you can move the origin in
Oops.
the moment.
Yeah, so this is the Ant. So I didn't have enough sponsors, so I put in Ant Pickleball. We got a new company. So there's Ant Pickleball, and I'm going to overlay this, and then I'm going to tab till I get that line,
Right.
and I'm going to move it. Let's just say move it 2 feet, and then Ant Pickleball moved 2 feet,
Nice.
and I'm done. So
Yeah.
I found myself nudging these items around till it looked right,
It's
and
kind
then
of
carried
subjective.
on.
That's great.
So yeah, so some of them worked out, some didn't.
And as walls, you mentioned that you can just swap out walls for the walls.
Yeah.
So as opposed
So
to using the drafting or using the paint
paint,
tool or doing a decal, and then you have to tab through and move decals around or remove them and add a new one. By making it
yeah.
a wall, you can just swap out walls, and the walls
So
have different materials associated
yeah.
with them.
So
So
I can
there you
make
go.
that save my play. Boom, save my play. Now you can see that it came in
It's got
off
a different
kilter.
origin.
So I had to just move it up a little bit till it looked right and be done. These
Right.
all worked out to like within a 1 foot. So it's a 1 foot increment. So I move it 1 foot. No, not enough. Another foot, and boom, done. Um, let's put that back to
Oh,
maybe
Simon's
blue.
mentioning that the decals don't show up if you have mirrors of materials. So that's another good reason just to put it on the geometry and you can swap it out as a wall.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
and one of the things was you mentioned you use a different uh model pattern to
yeah,
kind of communicate which wall type it is, because that's just a good in Revit, that's
yeah.
just a good way
So
to know.
there's the acacia one. It's orange. Their logo has orange in it. Mine has blue in it, and then just different sizes. And the different sizes, some of the smaller logos, I put a smaller um, pattern in so that I could just
Right.
snap pattern to pattern and be done.
Does
Um,
that light pattern even show up when you print? Does it
it would, but I would want it to, you
right?
know, or I'd filter if it's CDs, construction documents, I would filter those wall types off. I wouldn't show them a
They're
construction
not going to
document.
show.
That's a banner,
Okay.
right? So you just run a filter and turn that off.
Oh, as a component type, yeah, just filter
Yeah,
for the
because that's
job.
more, that's like, putting a picture in a residence, a painting. You don't put paintings in the drawings.
Right.
You put them in the presentation, but you don't put them in the drawings.
And use filters to turn that stuff off when you're
Yeah.
printing your construction set.
So
So
just yeah, if yeah.
the other custom thing that you did was, well, I mean, it's full of custom stuff. But the material for the wallpaper.
Ah,
Yeah.
okay, that's a fun one. So let's go to right over here. So the client wanted this wall to be just gray.
Right.
And for whatever reason, I said, okay, fine. So we did a gray. But in my contract with them or my proposal with them, I said, look, I've reduced my fee from giving you black and white to giving you full color and haven't changed the fee, but I get to do whatever hell I want with the model when we're done. And they
Right.
said, sure, that saves us money. So I said we needed something poppy, something fun. This is a fun pickleball place. This is where you're going to go and have a good time and have parties and whatnot. It's not a highly contentious, you know, super great players, but we still are paying attention to that.
It's a
So
fun sporting environment.
yeah,
Yeah.
so I wanted to pop the walls a little bit more. But one of the things you don't want to do in pickleball is you don't want to have a bunch of bright colors because that distracts your eye when you're playing. So
Right.
it's got to be kind of muted, kind of the same colors. And so I wanted to put a net and a little paddle and a ball and then some background color. So I drew this net like I did before in Revit
Right.
and on a I think 10 foot by 30 foot um, drafting view,
Right.
and I just drew it black and white, right? And then exported that to Photoshop and made that a layer.
Right.
Then got this and I traced this and made that a layer above the net layer, and then copied that paddle around and rotated it a little bit in Photoshop
Okay.
and put it in. And it looked great, but it was still kind of weird in the background and it just looked flat. So I went back into Photoshop and gave those layers a drop shadow.
Yeah,
Awesome.
'cause
This
like
is
under the
awesome.
pickleball holes, you even made the pickleball holes a negative. So
Yeah.
instead of the holes are positive, but you can see the drop shadow. And you
Yeah.
started in Revit.
Yeah. And then what I did in Photoshop, and I was like, I was in a big hurry to do this. This whole thing took me probably about 45 minutes.
Right.
And then I said, I need something, I need to model the background. And I don't know Photoshop very well. So I went in and I did the effects, and I found one that said water. I said
So it was just
water,
a
okay,
solid
and then
background
do
to
make it
start.
purple. That's actually water, just to give it a
Okay.
modeled background look. And then made that a JPEG or a PNG file and made it a paint color and or a material and painted the walls. And just click, 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 click,
Right.
and went hog wild with it.
Yeah, the
You can
drop
see,
shadow, it gives it a nice depth. It just a
yeah,
little depth that really makes it pop.
yeah.
So, I mean, while we're here talking about this wallpaper, you've also got this signage geometry, but it's illuminated. It's not like you've got lights facing the front of it. Could you describe the process how you illuminate this sign? And you've also got an interesting option with regard to illumination as well.
Right. I'm going to bring you back over to Revit and show you that that's this wall right here.
Right.
And so it's this object.
Okay.
Oh, you can see the pattern from my material, the
Oh, for the wallpaper.
wallpaper.
Yeah.
Okay. So you can see this, and I could open this
Yeah.
family up. So, but one of the things that before I do that is I can say in here, it says show light or don't show light. And I can turn that off. And you can see that there was a double line there, turning
Right.
it on. That double line, that's actually a physical object behind the letters. So the
Okay, so
letters
we're
have a
looking at this
thickness.
is a wireframe view.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. So let's just open that up.
And why would you have parameter to control the illumination? What's the advantage there?
Because there's times when I don't want that to be an illuminated sign. It's just a regular sign. And so I
Okay,
didn't want two families.
gotcha.
And the parameter is on and off. So this object, its visibility is controlled by show light. I could name whatever I want, show light. So let's go to, I'm gonna, oh,
So if you uncheck that, it turns off the geometry, which then turns off the illumination. You're using
right.
illumination in the project or in the family to control the light. It's not a light object in Revit. It's
No,
geometry
you're
with a
right.
material.
So the material that I call, and I use it on a bunch of stuff, is ant LED light. And
Okay,
that's a self-illuminating material.
right,
But if I turn off the physical object, the light turns off
right.
because the object's not there.
Yep.
And then of course I can change the offset from how far it is off the wall, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And so we can control those things. Um, did you want to go any further into that?
No, I think that's the thing.
Um,
It's like illumination is not always a result of having to put light objects in Revit into something. Sometimes just having geometry with illumination gives you the effect without the complexity. Like if you had to model individual lights, it would just be a pain. But
yeah,
like there's lots of situations in your projects where you have kind of recessed illumination. You don't want to go through all the complexity of placing light objects into things. And if it's signage and you put lights in it, then you got to do something complex to make it a light. This
right.
doesn't schedule as a light. I guess it's scheduled
Yeah.
as something.
I've done this to make it look like LED or not
Right.
LED, neon.
Okay.
And you did it in your sample, right? Your
Yeah.
sample
I
has,
like the geometry approach
yeah,
sometimes.
yeah.
So that
So
self-illumination is what
let's
creates,
just click that button, and then I had to tinker with what worked the best with
right.
these numbers, and I did a custom, and I was between 50,000 and 100,000, and of course I can model it or change that wherever, but then it lights up the
That's great.
wall. So if I click that, I'm going to change the properties and turn it off.
Oh, to
And
see what it looks like
yeah,
without the illumination. And it's just a checkbox.
yeah. Ooh, it's not working.
You might have to not refresh the scene, but sometimes the illumination you want and
That's
like Enscape's going to have to see the change. That's right. That's great. There you go.
I'm still illuminated.
Are you
Let's
you
go.
clicked it away in Revit? We're doing it live.
Yeah, there we are. Oh, I was looking at the wrong one. this is the one we're looking at. So there it is. It's turned off.
There you go.
Look at us. Well, this is what happens when you have two or three of the same sign.
Right.
And it's an instance parameter. So one can be on and one. There you go.
There you go. One could be on, one could be off. Love
Right.
it.
Yeah.
Did you model, is that modeled text or did you just create geometry and extrude it?
No, it started out as model text, and then they gave me the font that it really was that
Right.
I didn't have, and it was not the right kind of text to model. So I traced it.
Yeah.
Again, that took a little bit of time, but once you trace it, then I could offset it and offset it inside to get, the light thing. I just
Oh,
pick
yeah,
an
yeah, yeah.
offset
Because
and
it's
trace it.
geometry, you can leverage it.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah.
I've
Because
had
if you
issues
do,
with model text. If it's too small, the text will collapse and it
yeah,
gets weird, the font gets weird. But if you model it where everything's in
yeah,
your sketch, you can open the sketch, scale it all down, and it
right.
still maintains itself. So I love it.
So, so this sign and the sign up front. Oops. Oh, hey.
Arno
Uh,
says, I hate that we need to trace.
yeah. Um, but they did give me a DWG of this,
Oh, okay.
so I was able to get most of it,
Yeah.
but I cleaned things up. So that sign and this sign are basically the same. I just take the sketch, scale it down, and then scale it up, and that all works great. So I started small and went big, so that the sketch lines would then just get bigger. If they go smaller, then you start to get the lines that are too short.
Yep. Yep.
Um,
Yep.
so I traced it, and now I think I have three different signs like this.
Yeah. I love it. I notice like sometimes if when you trace te if you have to trace a text, I like being really particular about having arcs that are extended so that the lines are all nice and smooth. If you have to pick lines from a DWG file, sometimes there's too many segments, and so I just
Yep,
clean it up and make it as
yeah,
few
that's what I
segments
did.
as possible.
Um, and that did take some time, but again, my name is on this stuff. So when
Yeah,
I'm putting stuff out, I want to make sure people go, oh, okay. They don't go, oh, he just, saved time here and there. So
right, right, right,
sometimes that goes back to me being OCD and, I want it to look right. And again, although, it's the placeholder approach again, just put
right.
something in knowing that it's just going to evolve over time. And then you evolve these things as you get
I
time.
like how you can create images with watermarks, and that's like, oh, that must be the company that did it. But you went to the extra step. It's in the retail shop. You've got
Yeah.
ways of identifying it. You're branding this. You're giving it your
Yeah.
brand without being literal about it in every
Right.
situation. And so if someone sees these, they don't need a brand on an image to go, oh, this was created by Jim Balding at the Ant Group. They're like, oh, that logo that's kind of subtle, that's the guy who did it. I think I'll talk to that guy about doing some work that I need done.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. So
even the
this was,
paddles, yeah.
yeah. Yeah. So I created an ant logo, or I have an ant logo, obviously, put it
Right,
into Photoshop and just changed the color. And
right,
that took like 5 minutes. Just change the colors, blue or red, or whatever. And then I built this paddle by sketching it. But the interesting thing that happened is that I sketched the outline and then I did a sweep around it. But
right.
Enscape then segments that, right?
Yeah, yeah.
You can see that the paddle is showing through the sweep.
Oh,
And I
okay.
thought, I can fix that. I just make the sweep thicker. And I said, no, leave it because it looks like a stripe on the edge of the paddle
Right.
that
Yeah, yeah.
adds more detail. So it's something that got screwed up, but it stayed,
And Bob
right?
would call that a happy accident.
Yeah, exactly. Um,
Oh, that's great. Yeah, even I mean some of these like Winter's Edge, that's a legit your
yeah.
sports drink, the pickle
Yeah. So
sports
this guy,
drink. These are real legit companies.
this one's fun because this is a great angle of it. Look at this. It's got a crinkle in the box.
Yeah. So it made
You,
using simple geometry, but then applying a material with imperfections to give that texture.
Yeah, because I scanned these on my scanner, put some
Yeah.
box down, scanned it, turned it, scanned it, and then applied that material to the box, and because there was a crinkle in my box, it looks like there's a crinkle here.
Right.
And this was the first one time I ever did that, and I was ecstatic over the results. I mean, I was like,
You
wow.
don't
And you
model
could,
boxes with crinkles on them. You just use a texture.
yeah, yeah. So you can see that there's got a 16th of an inch thickness right there.
Yep.
So there's just, 6 sides.
Sure.
And so that material applies to this. And, you got front, top, bottom, right, and left sides.
Gotcha.
Um, it was really cool.
Overall, you're not, you mentioned that you don't always go to the client to present these. You have to do them online. So one of the concluding remarks we had was your presentation process to kind of prepare how you're going to walk the 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 design review through the process without having to walk around and do it in the.
Right. So I set up uh, views, and you create a new view, keep this view, create it. And I set them up with numbers.
Okay,
So the check-in counter is 0, 0.
gotcha.
And then 1 is the next shot. So I'm walking someone through the project, and then I can change the numbers and reorder it on the fly. And then when I no longer want a view, like this view, 90, I change the number to 99
Just so it
so that
drops out of the.
it drops down. And then when I'm doing a batch rendering, you can see that I stop rendering at 16. I
Right,
just grab that group, batch render. If 16 is no longer valid, I make it 26
right,
or 36 or whatever. I don't because I don't want to get rid of it, but I don't want to batch render it.
right.
And then I use those to do a video. Do we want to talk about video?
Yeah, we can talk about video that using your sort of bookmarked views to create the
I I
moments through the
can you
video.
do can you actually do that? Can you use those as the keyframes, or do you have to set them up again?
Um, you if you jump to the view in Revit and then create your keyframe,
Oh,
but you
I
just
didn't
have to
know
go back
that.
and forth
Yeah.
through it. But I like
So,
this idea of not. I like the idea of being deliberate about telling the story as you're going through the project. And
mhm.
if you just walk around randomly, well, first of all, you're wasting time, right? Going from point to point, and you're
Right.
not really curating what you're looking at. You're kind of telling a story. And so having these views set up where your 0, 0 is your starting view,
Right.
is kind of, and then walking through those bookmarks, and you might have to deviate, you might have to jump
Yeah.
around a bit, but you have the ability to get back on the track and tell the rest of the story.
And as I'm doing this, my workflow is, I've inserted one. It's in between party room and practice time. I just call it 07.5,
Oh,
and
if you have to do
it's
it
in
in line.
line. And then when I'm done, I go into Revit and I renumber them, and I make them, whole numbers again, just because of the OCD thing. But that's the way I want it, and that's all good.
Look, even the screens, the kind of subtle details here. Apparently, there's a recording mechanism that people can use when they're playing to
Yeah.
save what they're doing. But you took the images from the project and then put them on the screen because that's an actual thing that's going to happen in the
Right.
facility.
So this is a real good example of that, because this is practice time. I'd have to find it. Okay, Save My Play Court 2. So Save My Play is the company
Right,
and it's a really cool device, but that's a camera on the wall shooting this gal practicing, right? And so I just take that image and then I make it the image on the TV, right?
right.
By making it a material. I went to the extra effort of putting a watermark on it for Save My Play.
Sure.
But just for those of you guys, this is not an advertisement for Save My Play, but Save My Play is a thing where when you check in, you say, "Hey, I want to record my session or our games," and they
Right.
click a button and they turn it on. You pay for that, and on your watch, you're playing a point, and you go, "That was a really great point. That was a great ATP." You click save, and it goes back to the beginning of the point, and then saves that one point. And you're playing again, and then Brian hits an overhead shot that was awesome. You go, "Oh, save that one." And at the end of the day, you've got a highlight film of all the good plays. You don't have to
Right.
edit. You're editing as you go. And the other brilliant thing about it is that the Pickleplex will watermark the videos, and then they'll
Right.
have a sponsor. It might be Tosi as a sponsor. And so when you put that play on social media saying, check out this shot by Brian, it's watermarked by Pickleplex and Tosi, and they get advertising dollars. So
People
it's
upload
actually
their
kind of brilliant.
videos, they upload their highlight reels and stuff. I mean,
Oh,
it's
people, yeah. And they'll go check this out. But a lot of them are some funny things, but or they'll send them to their friends. Check this out. This is cool.
right.
But the other thing is that people are using it to do instant replay to one, see a great point, but also was the ball in or out, right? Because you got
Oh,
a high
they
definition. Because you got
right.
Say My Play is a really high definition camera. You go, oh, look at that. It was in or it was out. So anyway, enough of the advertisement for that. But
No, it's
so
cool.
so this shot is the shot of the guy diving, but that's
Right.
on every TV. I didn't go through the effort of saying, put this game on here and this game on there. I just, that's too much time.
Yep.
Um,
No, it's a great metaphor.
yeah.
And this is not your first Pickleplex project,
No, this one was the first one. I've done two. We're
right?
supposed to do a third, but there's some regulatory stuff that's happening that may prevent me from doing that.
It's a cult. It's a bit of a cult, I think.
Oh
Pickleball,
yeah,
even on Holden Beach, which is in the middle of nowhere, there
yeah.
is a pickleball court and it's booked all the time. People playing pickleball. It's
It's addicting. It really is. It's fun, and you know what? They just did a study, and I didn't have it ready for you, but the largest age group for pickleball 3 years ago was the 60 plus, the
okay.
55 plus, right? It's no longer the largest age group. It's the 24 to 35. It's the
Really?
largest number of players, followed by the 55 plus, followed closely by teenagers and
Really?
the
So the
14
demographics are
14
going down.
it yeah, the average age of a pickleball player is going down.
Okay.
Which is
I
cool,
mean,
but
tennis is hard. If you hit the ball wrong, it ends up going over
yeah,
the fence and
yeah.
then you have to chase it. But is it because it's so approachable?
It's well, put it this way. You're standing in a parking stall and you
Right.
have to defend the parking stall. It's not very big,
Right, right,
right?
right,
That's
right,
your defense. There's two people on the court. You're playing doubles,
right,
and you're defending a parking stall. So it's 3 steps to get to the back line. I
right.
could go 3 steps. I actually was playing pickleball in a league, and then I walked over to people playing tennis, and I stood on the tennis court going, "Holy
Where's all this?
crap, this is huge!"
Right, right, right.
Yeah. So it's that. It's fast paced. It's not stroke. Stroke is click, 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 click.
Yeah,
it's really quick.
it's fast.
And then you're standing only 14 feet up from the other person. It's hard to get mad at somebody 14 feet away. If you're in tennis and you're 100 feet away, you can go, oh, you're such an whatever.
Right.
There's not much buffer.
There's a social kind
Yeah.
of component to this. It keeps it friendly.
Yeah. And there's a tradition that after the game, you go and tap paddles and say good game. And there's times when you're angry, but you still go and tap paddles and yeah. And
That's
it gets the
because we hate
competitive
to lose.
juices out. You get a chance to, you don't go home and kick the dog.
Uh,
You hit the pickleball harder.
here you go.
Uh,
Jim, thank you so much. Let me see any questions. Someone's asking about the pattern on the floor with the blue and the red.
oh, yeah.
How did you do the carpet to get the pattern?
Okay, this is this is Tarquet or Tarquet. So you go on their website and you say this is the color I want, and this is not the color I pick, but then they have samples that
Right.
you can download, and it's a square.
Okay.
So then I got the 3 colors of the samples and put it in Photoshop, and then just snapped them around and rotated
So
the
you made
pattern.
one overall module with beige color, orange, and blue, and then that repeats. But you got it from the
Yeah,
manufacturer's website.
yeah. So Target is really good about that, and I don't know if you can see the repeat on it, but I
Yeah.
just I would
I
just
mean,
copy them around.
yeah.
Maybe I should have put one here with a a different color,
But it's
whatever.
just a material.
It's a material, and it's got no bump map or anything on it,
Yeah,
but
we're
it still looks great. Yeah, that's a good
Oh,
point.
Scott Dillo is asking, how did you find the 3D paddleball players?
Ah, I did not find them,
Yeah.
and we should have brought that up. You're too humble, Mr. Reed. I approached a company called Reed Thomas.
No, this was not
I
planned.
had
Thanks,
I
Scott.
had found tennis players, and I said, "Hey, I need these turned into pickleball players."
Right.
And so
Without
for
I mean, without colored clothing and stuff. You just needed you needed scale and context.
yeah, and I kind of wanted just white. And no, they would have charged me too much money to put clothes on these people or colors on their clothes. I'm sorry about that. Um, so I found them, and then they rigged them up, so to speak, put a paddle in their hands rather than a racket.
Right.
And this gal looks a little bit funky.
But
So
it's just
anyway,
custom assets.
yeah. So these are custom assets that you guys made for me. I think I got 14 of them.
Right.
And then again, this is placeholder approach to the T. Next project, I'm going to ask them to model more and then change where they are and
Yeah.
maybe change it so they this guy looks okay. He's ready. This guy you don't dive on a pickleball court. She looks kind of funky, but I only had so many to choose from.
Yeah. Yeah.
But these actually they showed me that these actually are moving objects, which I don't want.
Mm.
Um,
Yeah, I think we
but
took the time. We bought these from a source that allows you to reuse them and repurpose them for commercial
yeah,
purposes. And then I think we took the time to rig them. So
yeah,
that way you could move things around and save new options.
yeah. And so
Um,
we haven't rigged them completely. So when
right.
we do that, we're gonna take some of the because most of the you think about it, only one person's active on the court. The other three are waiting. So this guy's waiting and is like waiting for a train. She's ready, or she's just ready to hit it.
She's ready to
This
crush it.
yeah, seems she seems ready, but she's really not.
Right.
So this dude over here, he's the one who's in ready stance. Okay, I'm ready. Hit it to me. She's like,
Yeah.
I don't know. She's dancing, 80s disco, whatever.
But it's good. It's
So
just context. It's just size and
exactly.
scale and yeah.
The interesting thing is that the client didn't want them in there in their renderings. So I'm like,
Right.
okay, turn them off.
So sometimes you do need them and sometimes you don't. Just
Yeah,
depends on what you want to accomplish. I like that idea. The tip that I've got out of this is using filters to turn things off before printing without having to go click, 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 and create
yeah.
views. Um,
So because those walls all have the word banner in them. Filter
right,
ban the word banner on walls and turn them off.
right, right, right.
Filters are awesome. Now we don't necessarily need to go through the filters and the transparency, but I want to tell you that the other project that we were working on that needed some transparency for constructability, we
Hmm.
used the filters and the Enscape. And here's the quote. Hold on.
Oh, you mean because
This
filters are now visible in Enscape 4.2. So
right.
you're using filters to make things show up a certain way
Transparent.
in Revit, but
Yeah.
now you can see them in Enscape.
So here is the quote. Very much appreciated. Well, I definitely had the architect's attention. The owner is hard to read. Fingers crossed. Your details were definitely a game changer.
Yeah, there you go. You're killing it.
So those are the details that had some transparency to show how the building was going to be built. Separate project, but
Thanks, Jim.
another success story.
Let's see any other questions. No other questions. I think this is great. I really appreciate it. Thanks, buddy.
Good to see Brian Mackey's face smiling at me.
Yes, he's in there.
Yeah.
Oh, Brian. And he behaved himself, which is
Yeah.
always
Well, you've got him mic'd. You got his
I
microphone
unmuted
muted.
Brian.
Yeah.
Look,
Yeah.
everyone, thank you so much for joining. Jim, thank you for this. Your t-shirt is in the mail. It'll be very
Nice.
special. And no, he says Brian's saying, I was in the waiting room. I thought I was being shunned. I was just constantly having to add people because not everybody showed up
Well, could you
by this time.
can't you just turn off the waiting room?
Maybe there's a way to turn that on where anyone can show up. I have to learn how to do that. Anyway,
Yeah.
sidebar. Thank you so much,
Okay.
Jim. Thanks everyone for joining. And let's do this again in the future.
Absolutely. That was fun.
Stuff. That's great. Thank you, everyone.
See you guys.